All right, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhoades, and Lou Bryson, as always. Plus, this week's special guest, Holly Watts from the Avenue Pub in New Orleans,
Hi.
who I'm going to let your host give a more formal introduction to in just a moment. Before we get started, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co. Just want to point out a couple of ways, as always, that you can interact with your hosts and their guests throughout the duration of the show. So to the right, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to say hello and let us know where you're joining us from in the world right now. There's a little button at the bottom as well that says ask a question. So if you have any questions for Polly, for Liz, for Marty, for Lou, enter them in down there. I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the show. And last but not least, invite your friends to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes that easy. But with all that said, my work on screen is done for the day. So I will leave things to Marty, Liz, and Lou. Take it away.
Hey, thanks there, Will. You are like the blue cheese stuffed olive in the dirty martini of life, my friend. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Duffy. I'm a former senior master of whiskey for Diageo. I always have to say it in that voice. Also, I've spent 18 sticky years, or months, as the national brand ambassador for Benedictine and B&B. 8 years as co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo. Very important event. Might come back this year, maybe. And then for the past almost 7 years, I have had the distinct pleasure of being the sole representative of Glencairn Crystal in all of North America and maybe soon to be South America as well. El Chapo of Crystal, right there. El Guapo. Little lizard.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller and spirit consultant. Have just over a decade of experience in alcoholic beverage sector, working across a variety of products and substrates, including beer, rum, vodka, but my particular favorite expertise, what we're all here for, whiskey. Spent most of my career at a small outfit called Diageo, but now I'm currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. What's that? You want to learn more about that? If you scroll down to the About the Host section, there's actually a little link to my website. So check it out. Lou?
Thank you, Liz. I'm Lou Bryson. I am a whiskey writer. I worked for 20 years as the managing editor at Whiskey Advocate magazine, and I am now a senior drinks writer for the Daily Beast. Yes, and currently still pushing desperately my no, I shouldn't say it that way. My latest book, Whiskey Masterclass, and of course the classic. Sorry, it's over there. Tasting Whiskey. Both available through the mail directly from me, which takes me a lot more money than when you buy it on Amazon. Check out my Twitter feed, which is @Lou Bryson. Today I am drinking El Whisky de Mexico. Abasolo is a corn whiskey made from 100% Mexican corn, all heirloom Mexican ancestral corn, as they put it. And it is, as you can see, lightly aged and quite tasty. There's a nice vanilla cinnamon thing going on there. Well, yeah, of course, you use the glass, and then you get that whole thing from the old Glencairn glass there.
Thank you. Yes, the bouquet.
You're welcome. Yes, sir. So
the nuances.
That's right. Use one nostril, then the other.
Mm-hmm. Hello there. Yes. Hello.
But enough about us. Today we are welcoming a good friend of mine, Polly Watts. Polly is the owner of the Avenue Pub in New Orleans. I have to be honest, I don't know how long we've known each other because, as is often the case with these,
right.
I have no idea when the hell I met you.
I was thinking about that the other day. We have so many common points of contact that I'm not sure how it happened either. I want to say it was through Stephen Beaumont.
But
I might be wrong.
I think he took me over there the first time.
Yeah,
because I remember we were on foot. We were going to walk to your place, and we were leaving. I can't remember where the hell we were, but we're leaving, and the bouncer says to us, "Let me call you a cab." And we're like, "No, we've been walking. We'll be fine." And the guy's like, "No, really. Let me Let me call you a cab. And Steven's like, what? We're two grown men. We can take care of ourselves. And this guy's like 6 inches taller than we are.
Right.
And he pulls his jacket and shows us he's packing and says, I would take a cab. And we're like, we would like a cab. I think we better take a cab. So yeah, I think that's actually, that was then. Yeah.
Okay.
And
could be.
Jared Oliver was there that night. I think he was there doing a Black Ops thing.
Oh, that could be.
I think that could
be. Yeah, he came a couple of times back in the day. So you would qualify for I've known you since back in the day.
Awesome. But that just goes to show you and I both came from beer originally.
Yeah.
And kind of graduated to whiskey.
Well, that's a good segue. Polly, can you tell us where you came from? Can you give us a little overview of, other than knowing Lou?
So from a business perspective, I definitely came from beer, but not from a personal perspective. Whiskey was first, bourbon specifically, because I lived in Louisville for many years. I didn't move back to New Orleans until my dad passed away in 2006, and then I took over the bar. But prior to him passing away, I would bring him stuff from Kentucky. You know, his favorite was Rock Hill Farms at the time, and you couldn't buy it, and Eagle Rare, and you couldn't buy it in Louisiana, right? So I would go to my local store and get it. So my love, if you talk about like what I loved first, it definitely was whiskey. Beer came along after I owned the bar. And then the whiskey, we started developing the whiskey part of the pub's portfolio as we got access to more products. Because when I first opened the bar, there was just not very, very little available.
Yeah, it seemed that way.
As far as whiskey meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, beer too, but definitely whiskey. Yeah.
There was so little whiskey. What time period was this, Polly?
So my dad died in 2006.
You didn't think there was enough whiskey in 2006?
Not available in Louisiana.
Oh, really?
It was available. You could get it out of state, but our distributors were not carrying it.
They were just carrying the big sellers.
They were carrying the big sellers, but not even the big sellers. I mean, I think they brought in Rock Hill Farms for me and one other bar.
Oh, wow.
Right? A bar in Baton Rouge. Nobody knew what it was. We couldn't get Elmer T. Lee. I worked on them. So where I found success was when
and now you can again, right?
Yeah. Where I found success was if we had a portfolio, and Sazerac was a good example. If we had a portfolio that had one or two things here, I would search through their catalog for the products that they offered in other states, and I would work on getting those products in. And I did a lot of that in the first 10 years. And then, of course, this was before brown goods exploded. They were kind of dead. Everybody's drinking vodka and flavored vodka then, right? And the only place in town that really had any kind of bourbon at all was Bourbon House. And I was kind of the second one. Now we've got Barrel Proof. We have other places that are focusing on it. But there just wasn't much of a demand. So I'll give you one of my best stories from those days. I was looking through the Glacier, which is now Southern or whatever it's called, backstock, because I would go through their inventory to see what was in there that nobody else in the city recognized. And I found a case of Tornado.
The Tornado.
The Tornado.
Nice.
And I looked at my rep and I'm like, what's that? Does anybody, can I have that? And he said, yeah, how many bottles? I'm like, how much you got? and he said, I think we got a case and 2 bottles or something like that. And I said, I'll take it all. So we bought it. We're literally down to our last bottle now. We have, I need my kids to insert my earbuds correctly. So we're down to our last bottle. So that's how I did it. It was, I would scour through and say, why you got a case of Elijah Craig in there that nobody's using, and that's how I built the supply.
That is amazing. There was a time I remember going through liquor stores in various states, and whiskey was on its rise.
Right.
But there had been attempts to release special editions, especially scotches, single malt scotches.
Right.
Like what's a Thrusk? Remember the Singleton of Thrusk?
Oh God, yeah.
I found a bottle of that on the bottom shelf of this liquor store, like 12 years after it stopped releasing it in the U.S.
Right.
Oh wow!
It was just sitting there, and still for $37.
Right.
Snatch that.
So
baby
that's
up.
it. That really is how I built my original collection. Was doing those things, and then of course, brown goods caught on, and everybody wanted this and that, and we started getting more bottlings, mostly bottlings, and then everybody started fighting over it. So
that seems amazing that in New Orleans, of all places, where you have a whole street called Bourbon, and if you listen to someone
but it's not named for the whiskey. You realize that?
No,
it sounds like the whiskey was named for it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, of course, bourbon was named after the line of French kings. Veitch, if you go
Actually,
with...
Veitch thinks it was named for Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
That the whiskey was, yeah.
Yeah, but somebody else has come out. Yeah,
I mean, I've heard rumors to that effect, and you're right. Michael does do great research, so...
Yeah.
You might be right.
If Veitch says it, I pretty much kind of take that on.
It's the law.
Yeah.
So he usually ends almost everything he says with "so let it be written, so let it be done." That's Mike Veitch kind of thing.
What's your source on that, Veitch? Oh, well then. Okay.
All right, it stops the conversation.
It does. But I think the debate stops with Veitch. Okay,
right.
That's the debate.
Unless you're talking to Chuck Cowdery.
Oh yeah.
In which case, it can go on and on.
They don't get those two even in a chat room together. It gets ugly.
Anyway.
Well, I had a quick question since we're on the topic about purchasing strategy and sourcing. So it sounds like probably the initial purchasing strategy was very a pull method, but how has that evolved to kind of where you're at today? Like, what is the decision-making process in bringing in new SKUs from a beer?
Well, it's completely different. I mean, first of all, the things that I was finding in the warehouse back then that there was no competition for, there's tons of competition for now, or the supply, they've gotten so popular nationally, they're not shipping to Louisiana anymore, like Rockville Farms. We're not getting any. And then it becomes, it's twofold. One, it's the allocation game. So if I want, more Elmer, I need to have higher sales for the Buffalo Trace lineup. Or if I want some of Jimmy Russell's special stuff, I have that. I mean, for years, Four Roses was my well. And I just switched. Lou and I talked about that a few years ago. I just switched. We're at Wild Turkey. We're with Wild Turkey now, and I still have a very, very deep love of Four Roses, and the very few people that I met in the industry when I started carrying Four Roses that are still there. There's almost no one left.
Wow.
So anyway, so that's part of it, and then the other part is all these boutique distillers that get signed on with, and we're flooded with it. I mean, literally, I could have new products in my bar every week, and they want me to taste it. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no, see, I got work to do.
Yeah.
And what's bad about that is you get to the point where you just say no automatically.
Yeah.
Because you don't have time. I mean, you're going to find a diamond in the rough, right? That's wonderful and worth a spot on the shelf. But chances are it's going to be mediocre or good, but not enough of it is different. Or as with a lot of these distillers, they're making products at a price point that works for a grocery store markup. They are not making products that work for a retail bar market. And so they bring me this little 750 that's $55, and it's, 1.5 to 3 year age.
Right.
And there's nothing, it's not bad. It's good whiskey, but no one's going to buy that in a bar. A collector that's going to a store who wants to try it will buy it, but no one's going to pay for a drink at a proper markup of that kind of whiskey.
Well, this stuff has a square bottle. That's a nice feature,
Oh yeah, that's very important. That's very important in my decision-making process, Lou. What the bottle looks like.
Right.
Yeah. Doesn't it though? I mean, so many bars, so many guys have, like Angel's Envy. At one point, Wes Henderson realized his bottle was getting turned sideways because there were so many whiskeys out on the market.
Right.
On a crowded back bar, his bottle was being turned sideways, so he started having to put the name on the side of the bottle. Same thing with Knob Creek and a number of others. So in a way, the shape of a bottle, square or round, actually works.
That's important to him. It's not important to me. I mean, I'm sorry to be blunt, but I'm not.
That's why we got you on.
Right. So that's important to him because he wants the visual behind the bar of his bottle. As a retailer, my staff is doing the talking, and it doesn't matter to me if it's side or front.
I still think advertising in a back bar. If a customer comes in, they can't always talk to a staff, so they like to be able to see what's up there and be able to.
I'm a guy like that. I'm always looking.
When you walk into my bar, pre-pandemic, and you see 300 bottles of whiskey up there, that's enough advertising.
Yeah.
For any individual brand. Sorry.
I know, but I mean,
this is bar owner versus, people who are selling a whiskey.
I mean, this is the same thing where you wind into. I mean, we're not the normal consumer,
right?
I mean, usually I'm looking at some place like that, and I'm like, okay, I don't know those four. What the hell are those for? But the normal consumer coming in, they know 5, and all the rest of them are just like, holy shit!
Oh yeah,
it becomes
so marketing. Yeah.
But go
ahead. Just circling back to kind of the purchasing decision and kind of the conversation we're having. I'm unfamiliar with. I've never been to your pub, so first of all, sorry.
No, it's all right.
But hopefully soon, post all this mess. Does your cocktail program depict kind of and feed into that purchasing strategy, or is it just
Well, a little bit. We pre-pandemic, since I helped my dad open it in when I was in college at Tulane. We were a neighborhood and a 24-hour bar. So we were much more of a shot and a beer place.
Okay.
We have a no muddling policy. And, or we did before the pandemic. I mean, we had a big sign that said, "We do not muddle, and you cannot have an orange slice in your beer." Right?
I like that.
I love
it. Lou, you don't remember seeing that sign? I'll send you a picture of it. Now we've had to do a big renovation and we don't have it anymore. But it was. I sort of feel like. Do you remember the "It's a Wonderful Life" when he goes back and Clarence takes him into this bar?
Oh, yes.
Right, and he says, "We're a bar for people that want to drink." Or I can't remember the exact phrase.
I want to get drunk.
All right, you two pixies. Out you go.
Yeah.
Out the door.
So sometimes I feel like when I tell people kind of where we come from, I kind of feel like that bar owner and It's a Wonderful Life saying, "I'm not making your frou-frou, gin fizz. That's down the street."
You mean you wouldn't make me a what was it, a rum mulled punch? Mulled wine? Heavy on the cinnamon, light on the clove?
No.
Be off with
that's what he asked for, I guess. But no, we don't do that. But as our program has evolved.
Sorry, I'm still laughing on no muddling policy. I love that.
So as our program has evolved, we've realized that we needed cocktails, and not cocktails for the sake of cocktails, but cocktails that we felt really beautified the whiskey that was in the bottle and offered different flavor profiles for different drinkers. And we also found that the bourbon cocktails were a great introduction to people who don't think they like whiskey. I have a strong preference for things that are not too sweet. Like when I go in and order a cocktail in a nice restaurant or a cocktail-oriented bar, I look at the list and I ask the bartender, which one is the least sweet? And they tell me, and that's what I order because I don't like a lot of sugar. So the guy from, I'm really good friends with the former manager of the Sazerac bar in the Roosevelt Hotel. And when we were first starting all this, he said, Polly, you need an old fashioned, like that's sort of particularly yours. And he said, I've got the one that I do at home. And would you like me to show it to you? And now we make a blood orange simple syrup. That's what we use as our simple syrup. And a little orange bitters. No. I think we use the traditional bitters. And that's it. And it's our blood orange old fashioned and it's not muddled. And people love it. Huh?
No muddling.
No muddling. No mojitos at the pub.
Because blood orange is usually a little bit tangier. No. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I actually don't like old fashions because they are too sweet to me.
Me either.
Yeah.
No, you have to really you have to not put much simple syrup in.
Yeah. Parse it back. Yeah. It's just never been a big fan of them. So now I'm intrigued about your version because I might like that.
And if you like old fashions when you make them at home, all you got to do is tell the bartender, half or a third of the simple syrup they'd normally use.
Yeah,
because they're making it from scratch. All that's controllable.
Yeah.
See, I always thought bourbon had a sweetness to it already.
It does.
That's why
you don't want to add.
Well, I know, but that's just it. That's why I've never really liked old fashions, and I'd rather go for like a black Manhattan. I like them drier and darker, and usually I like to use rye as opposed to.
Yeah,
I usually use rye too, to be honest with you, if I'm making it for myself.
Oh, the old fashioned too, or the Manhattan.
Yeah,
both.
Yeah. So I mean, I mix. I switch back and forth between Four Roses, small batch, and Sazerac rye.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Boulevardier girl, so like that.
That's what they say about you, Liz.
Speaking of blood orange, have you ever David Wondrich, when he was writing the cocktail column for Whiskey Advocate, had a recipe for something called a Herald Punch. And it's blood orange juice, rye whiskey, and a fairly funky rum.
Oh, that would be interesting. You have to send that to me.
I think just a touch of sugar. Yeah, I'll dig it out. I mean, every time blood orange season comes around, I make them, and I didn't get to make them this year because I was at the wrong house. I didn't have access to any funky rum.
Walmart had blood oranges this year.
I got a whole bunch of blood oranges.
Yeah,
I was
like, oh my God. We usually have to go out on, search for that. But
Wegmans had them by the bag. It was great.
Lou, you should see Dave Schmier about that funky rum.
Yeah, really. I hear he's got the funkiest.
He has the
funky rum, yeah.
Dave will get the funk out to you. And also, is that cocktail? I mean, with Dave Wondrich, I mean, he reaches back into history. Was that like John Adams' favorite?
Well, yeah, not quite, but close. I think it was in the 1890s in Philadelphia.
Oh, not as far back as John Adams, but close.
No, but
McKinley, I think, it was McKinley's big cocktail.
I'll have to the one on the Benedictine cocktail, that Frisco cocktail apparently was a favorite of Truman's, which is where
See,
again, not so far back as John Adams, but not exactly contemporary either.
That was one of the few I could drink all the time because the lemon juice, fresh lemon, and the rye just kind of counteracted. I love it, but
it is sweet.
I came this close to becoming diabetic. within 18 months.
You did say they were sticky, so
Very sticky.
Molly, I had a question that I had mentioned to you. I love the food at the Avenue, and I was just curious as to whether the menu is influenced by the drinks list, and if it
absolutely.
is more by beer or more whiskey.
Well, I would say that it's more influenced about the area. Yes, by the drinks, but also by the area of the countries that we have traveled.
Oh yeah.
So as you probably know, I took my staff to Belgium a few years back, and then I took them to Denmark and Sweden a couple of years back. We've made multiple trips to Kentucky. So kind of every time we go, we try to come back and develop something that is part of, usually it's a twist, but a twist on some of those pub items that you see. Yeah, I really need my kids for this.
That's why you get these.
Yeah, I didn't have those.
No, what you need is a little drop of Elmer's glue in there so they stay in.
Absolutely, yeah. Then I can get famous about gluing my ear shut. But sorry.
That's all right. Ear hacks, I like it.
but yes, it does influence. It comes sort of organically that way.
Do you incorporate whiskey into food or beer into food?
Yes, we do.
Nice.
So,
I like that. I don't know why. I just always love that.
Yeah.
There's just something about it. Hey, Polly, I was wondering, only because it happened up here in Chicago as whiskey started, becoming more and more popular. All of a sudden we didn't just have 2 whiskey bars in the city. Next thing you knew, we had 10 different whiskey bars. And a competition grew, not only to grab the rarities and, to really, some really didn't grab for the rarities, but for numbers, for size of selection, who had the biggest and who was the best whiskey bar. Did you find you were getting into that down in New Orleans as more and more whiskey bars started popping up? Was there any kind of competition? But
it's very similar. The beer went through that process too, as Lou can tell you. It became all about how big your selection is. And I realized with beer pretty early on that just having every product in the world does not make you a good beer or whiskey bar.
Yeah, right.
It needs to be curated. And so overstocking is the sort of easy way to make yourself look impressive. But you really have to train your staff on both product lines. Find out what they love. If they say they don't like this ahead of time, you do a series of tastings with them. We do classes for our staff, all this pre-pandemic, right? But classes for our staff where we sort of explore both whiskey and beer, and teach them a lot about it. Again, focus more on bourbon than Scotch, but some Scotch. And then you have a curated list. And so I would say that ours has always been curated. It's and granted that there's a certain amount of personal taste that goes along with that. I choose things I like to drink. And I get my staff's opinion if there's something that they particularly like, even though it's not my deal. I go ahead and bring it in. And I am almost never a vodka or gin drinker. So I completely take their advice, or tequila occasionally, but or rum even. I completely take their, my staff, I'm a bourbon girl. Honestly, I am. Yeah. So, pretty much everything else. No, so pretty much everything else. Now that some of the barrel aged, the older rums and tequilas, there's a similarity there that I really like. But I take their advice because they are drinkers of those products into what we should bring in.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I think again, Veach has done a couple articles, so it's definitive. It's definitive,
right?
An article, but I agreed with him on a number of points in that, he wrote what makes a good whiskey bar, and it isn't just selection because, you do have a lot of folks that just fill up the back bar. They'll order everything that a supplier has, but then the staff can't tell you anything about it, or they don't serve it properly, or they have cruddy glassware, which of course we know is very important. But I mean, no presentation, they'll give you crappy tap water. If you ask for, hey, can I have a little water on the side?
Right.
Things like that.
Well, I went down a rabbit hole for a while trying to get Kentucky water, bottled water.
Hello, little branch.
Yeah, and I wanted
Mississippi.
I wanted Kentucky, and I wanted the from the area where all the subterranean limestone is. And I tried, and my Sazerac rep tried. And I think it was my Buffalo Trace rep, and I never could get it. They said something like, "Oh, well, you have to order 1,000 pallets." Well, that's a little much, and I get it because nobody else in the city wanted water from Kentucky, but I really wanted it, and who knows? Maybe I'll drive a truck up there one day and just come back with a lot of hot water.
That's something I feel like that's been picking up as a trend lately, and it's not just branch water, but what was it? Glenlivet just put out a kind of.
I did hear about that. Yeah. Well, part of the problem with New Orleans is our water is very heavily treated.
Yeah,
and so
same thing. Chicago
chlorine.
Yeah, and you really cannot use it. And I just don't. Sometimes we have to. But the ice cubes in particular are a hard thing to manage without using the city water. Yeah. I mean, we got the bottles, right? And that's fine. It ends up being kind of a neutral flavor. But I would love to figure out a way to not make the ice that goes in whiskey out of city water.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm with you there as a consumer, and even sanitizer. Without, been to beer bars. Okay, great. Everything. And this is maybe not as a consumer lens, but as someone who works in the production side or developed, and it's like everything that went into making this. And then you get to the last point and you didn't clean you didn't clean the glass. You just didn't do it. What's up with that?
Yeah. Why do you pay all that and then?
And a number of companies try to import Scottish spring water.
I've heard that, yeah. But again, we're not so much into Scotch, so I haven't done that. But
even for that, I guess one of the problems was they had to jump through more hoops to import it than if you were importing
whiskey. Yeah,
it's crazy. So just steal it. Go over there. Go up to build your own little pipeline from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Somebody's little spring.
Underground.
Right.
Yeah. Go to that grotto at Jack Daniels and just get some Tennessee spring water.
This little town we're in is, they make a lot of their money on fly fishing tourism. So the water treatment plants are ridiculously good.
Interesting.
Yeah, my water is actually more expensive here than it is back home because of the level of the treatment plant.
Okay.
Because they want to make sure the streams stay pristine, and they do. I mean, they just stopped last week, and the fish are like,
they're so happy.
That's pretty cool.
Oh my God, they love it.
Well, it does make a big difference. If you ever tasted real spring water, I mean, at least I did in Scotland, and
it has a liveliness to it.
Having grown up in Chicago. And Chicago is supposed to be the most drinkable. However, it's due to a lot of chemicals to make it that drinkable.
Right. New Orleans, our standard is as long as it's not going to give you cancer within 2 years, it's good.
As long as the body's not floating in it.
Right.
But it's amazing if you taste real spring water. And then when you think the whiskey. However, it's funny. Again, you're more into bourbon, but one instance, I went to Oban once, and one of the first times I was in Scotland, I asked him, where's your spring? Where's the spring water? And he goes, oh, it's the city top. We just use the top water. But, the city gets it from, the town really gets it from a spring. So it's a little treated, but it's all right. It's still spring water. Okay. Takes a little of the romance out of it. But.
Right.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of that going on in Kentucky, too. So
yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, even groundwater, even spring water can't, it's going to be exposed to stuff nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
No matter what.
So we were, before the show started, we were talking with you about COVID stuff, about keeping the bar open and
staying alive.
Speaking of hoops to jump through, you wanted to keep your staff, I guess, whole. Tell us about how you did that.
Well, I won't say that my goal was to keep them whole because I knew that was unachievable. I wanted to keep them from sinking. So I sort of envisioned it as we're all out and we have these lifeboats or that we're hanging on to these big inflatable things, and we can all survive if we link together and keep the others from drowning. And unlike a lot of people, I was not surprised by this. Now, if you'd asked me in April when I thought we'd go back to normal, I would have said there was a 50% chance that it was fall. So I was a little bit surprised that it went through. And everybody in New Orleans thought, oh, we're going to get 1 month off and then we'll be back to regular business. I absolutely knew that wasn't the case. In fact, on our annual Ash Wednesday dinner with the staff, I said, don't spend your Mardi Gras money because it's coming. And there's a very good chance we'll be shut down and that the festival season won't happen. And literally, I had staff snicker at me because they thought I was insane. And a couple of them listened. And so at any rate, my goal throughout this has been to balance what they were able to get on unemployment, what money we could get access to through the PPP or the EIDL, and then an awful lot of my personal savings to make sure that if they stayed with us or they were still part of the roster, that they could still get their health insurance. And as I was telling you before the show, it wasn't just a question of me paying the 50% that I used to pay and them paying the other 50%. I knew I had an obligation to try and pay 100% because they didn't have any money coming in. So there was no way for them to pay their typical 50% because they didn't have the money for it. So that was my goal. And somebody very early in the pandemic, I sat in on 8 million Zoom meetings with professionals and everything. And one of them said, you will survive this there's no silver bullet. It's this grant and this program and this sale. He said, you're going to patchwork it all together. And then when we're done, if you're still standing, that's what you want. So my goal was from April, really, we stay afloat. We keep our staff afloat. We keep our staff and their families healthy. I fed them for the first 6 weeks and did all their grocery shopping.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't want them going into the grocery store and getting exposed.
Yeah.
So we closed down for business, which we had to, and our staff stayed at home unless they were at the pub cooking for each other. And I ordered things like paper towels, sanitizer, bleach, all that stuff. I ordered it in cases, in boxes, and they would get all their supplies, like feminine supplies, baby shampoo, everything you would have to go to a pharmacy or a grocery store for. I ordered in bulk, and they would just come to the bar and do their, they didn't pay me back, but you know what I'm saying, the grocery shopping. And we made communal meals prior to the shutdown. We made a bunch of communal meals, and I sent them all home, and I said, stuff your mama's freezer, stuff your sister's freezer, fill it up because we don't know what's going to happen. That was almost immediately after Mardi Gras. And they all thought I was insane. But I had friends in Hong Kong, and I knew what was coming. And I knew it wasn't just shut down, make no money. It was, access to grocery stores while staying safe. I mean, it was all those things. So my goal from the beginning was just put this together and that together. Let's kind of figure it out as we go. And the staff got reasonably nervous about, well, what's going to happen next month or what's going to happen in 2 months. And I said, we don't know. So we are figuring this out as we go. But just know that my goal is that everybody be able to tread water until it opens back up, whether that takes 6 months or a year. Is just, let's all tread water. Let's be above the wave when this ends and not sink under. And so that's kind of been our approach.
And now you sold a large portion of your Belgian beer. That last summer. Was it last June or July?
It was August, but was it July or August? I'm losing my mind now. I can't remember. It all runs together. Yeah, it's all a big blur. Because we had been shut down again by another wave, and I'll be honest, the business was so bad, it really didn't make that much of a difference, right? Because nobody was going out. So I had people in working just because they needed to make something, but it was actually costing me more to stay open than it would have been just to close. So when the state shut us down, I was like, okay, that's not great, but it might actually be better than us being open. And but how do I keep my staff afloat? How do I pay their 100% of their insurance, because they have no money, right? And we sold our cellar, our beer cellar, sold a lot of it, and people paid some pretty extraordinary prices for some of those beers. We're kind of a bargain when it comes to those things. And I had a couple of Soleil de Menu from Jean and Stena in Sweden that they had sent me as a personal gift, and I sent a message to them both and said, do you mind if I sell these? And all the money's going to go to the staff's health insurance. And plus there were a bunch of other cantillons. And Jean said, you do what you need to do, Polly. Just best wishes. And Stena, of course, Stena doesn't, he's fast and loose to begin with. So I got to send him this video then. And for your viewers that don't know, the Jean I'm talking about is Jean Van Roy of Cantillon. And Stena, who was the former owner of Accurat and is a long-term friend of Jean. And every other year they make a cloudberry lambic that Stena gets the cloudberries from Sweden and drives down overnight to Jean in Brussels and makes. It's never available on the market. There's only one place that gets it, and that's Stena's place. So it is like this incredibly rare and truly exquisite beer. I mean, it's just, not only is it rare, but it's one of those things that's rare, and it's just an exquisite beer. So we did that in August, and then we raised so much money that it kept the insurance paid through November. Well, really through early December. We paid our December premium with that money. And then we were looking at January saying, we don't know what the shutdown situation is going to be. And how much business they're going to be. It's not just shutdown. If nobody's going out, it doesn't matter if you're shut down or not. You still can't pay the bills. And we realized we needed to start selling the whiskey. So we had our whiskey backstock. And so we sold a lot of whiskey. And that carried us through until the PPP started in early March.
Well, it also makes sense to get rid of your beer. Sell beer first, because beer has a limited lifespan, as opposed to, say, your whiskey, which you could hold on.
Yeah, not really.
No?
No. Lambics and gooses, and if they're properly bottled, which are going to be the ones that I'm selling for big money, are can be shelved for 20 or 30 years. Wow. Right, Lou?
I literally just put an 11-year-old lambic in the fridge this morning. I'm going to have it this weekend.
So they're intended to age. Now, Lou and I can get like all technical about the fact that I actually don't prefer aged fruit lambics. I like them fresh.
Yeah.
But for a lot of consumers, the idea of having an 11-year-old Fiffoon or apricot lambic or one of those is sort of the height of their experience. I love an aged goose, but I don't want an aged lambic. I think it's sort of a waste of the fruit. But now general beers, IPAs, pale ales, all those things, yes, they have a short shelf life. But those things are not in my cellar. The stuff when I say cellar, I mean I don't put things in my cellar unless they can be aged at least 5, if not 10 years.
Okay. Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions, and Marty kind of stole the. No, I'm kidding.
Can't help it, Liz.
I'm just kidding.
The thunder stealer.
That's something that I've seen kind of on the flip side with, people that I've interacted with or clients that I interact with on the contract distilling side. I've seen sort of an uptick of bar owners trying to not just bar owners, but breweries too, craft breweries trying to offload their stock and trying to, and we turn this into something that's going to be usable or we could sell and recoup the cost,
Right.
I think that's a very different lens. Like, and I'm glad you clarified that. Yeah.
That is what we call a pivot.
Right.
That dirty word that we can't use.
I thought that was a dirty word. Will, can you beep that out? About that word pivot?
I was thinking about that when you talked about pivot in the pre-show. There's a friend of mine who's like, I've pivoted so goddamn much. There's a 6-inch hole in the ground.
There you go. That is so true.
I feel like a ballerina.
Divot.
Yeah.
Divot, right. So sorry, the pivot about getting rid of. How do you get rid of all that? You had to get rid of all that draft beer.
Yeah.
Oh, we threw it away.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Couldn't give it to the homeless?
No.
Jesus. I can't believe that's the first time I've heard anyone say that.
Makes sense. Just put a little tap out on the corner. Actually, how's the rest of the of New Orleans bar industry holding up right now? Are they all basically
very tough? It's been very tough. We reopened with a restaurant license, which allowed us to stay open at times where straight bar licenses weren't allowed to. Alluding to Lou's comment about the food, our food program was already fairly well developed. It's even more developed now. And so that was a natural thing for us to be able to do, which allowed us a little bit more flexibility. The city has, it's actually not the city's restrictions, it's the state. The city gets blamed for a lot of this because people love picking on the mayor. But right now, bars and restaurants that serve alcohol cannot open prior to 8 a.m. and they cannot sell. They have, for all intents and purposes, close at 11. So you have between 8 and 11 to do your business, and that came because New Orleans is sort of a different market than other states and cities, and even Baton Rouge. And we were having some pretty significant problems with super spreader events on Bourbon Street and the college bars in Baton Rouge, and then some of the clubs here that were letting people in the back door. I mean, fire hazards. If something had happened, people would have died by the masses because they had blocked the front. Yeah, really bad. And so, most people think of New Orleans as, this is the place you can do anything. And while that's never been true, a lot of people hadn't made the refocus to, you can't do all that during a pandemic. So the 8 to 11 is limiting. And then the other issue is the social distancing. If you really pay attention to what the CDC says and then what is required by the state, although they don't have the manpower to enforce it, it's not just occupancy percentages. So they can say, you can have 75% occupancy, but the caveat behind that is always if you can social distance the tables, right? So 75% occupancy of the bar we used to be at was like, okay, maybe there's 6 inches between every standing person as opposed to 3 inches between every standing person. It's not 6 feet. So the occupancy rate, the occupancy limits going from 50 to 75% or even 100% do make absolutely no difference in what you can safely serve in most places. Until we can get people, again, this is people who are following the rules, which I am, until we can get to the point where you can have a crowd of 40 or 50 people standing arm to arm in a bar, reaching over people to get their beer, our business is not going to return to normal. And that's a high bar in terms of infection rate and herd immunity and all of that. We're not close to that yet. Does that make a little more sense? Now, a fine dining restaurant where everybody was seated before, they can probably be back at 100% occupancy right now because those tables were already separated. But bars, especially bars like mine, didn't rely on seating. And we actually had to buy tables for my bar post-pandemic because that wasn't the model we were.
Yeah.
Did you put up any of those plastic barriers?
Yes. Mm-hmm. We put up, I did quite a lot of work. I gutted the HVAC system and installed a, the COVID blaster technology that I can't ever remember what it's called, but we did a lot of research and basically the return air gets treated by this, I think it gets treated
Ultraviolet?
by this machine. What's that?
Ultraviolet or?
Yeah, there we go. It must be
Ultraviolet.
ultraviolet. It's the technology they use in hospitals and schools where they suck up, the air goes into the return system. It gets treated. They wipe out any bacteria that's there or viruses, and it's like 99.9% effective. And so before the air gets spit out back into the customer and employee area, it gets completely cleaned of viruses. And it's not a lot. You can buy these things, you sit in the middle of the room that claim to do that. That's not what works. It's an inline system. You have to have ducts big enough to carry it. You have to have a certain level of equipment. You have to install a fresh air system. There has to be a certain amount of circulation per hour. Like it has to pull. It's basically music club standards now are like that too. So we did that. It cost us about $55,000 in the fall. And then we did the plexiglass barriers, because what I didn't want was first we did the plexiglass barriers, but then I realized, if I've got somebody who's coughing in a corner and doesn't think they have COVID and the AC sucks it up, it's going to dump it right on my employees' heads. What good does a plastic barrier do if it's going through the system? And there's some studies that were done in either China or Hong Kong. I can't remember. I read a lot about airflow.
Because I remember seeing that it was in China. Yeah.
That talked about the way the virus passes within an HVAC system building. And that, I think I read that back in May, and I said, okay, long term, this is what we need. Because COVID, while deadly and very serious, is not the only virus we went across, in a year. Yeah. We all call it the Mardi Gras crud here. Everybody gets sick after Mardi Gras. Now, our staff has not been getting as sick after Mardi Gras. I mean, I put hand sanitizer on the bar at Mardi Gras for customers and staff to use. I started that 10 years ago, and that cut down on it, right? When I say the Mardi Gras crud, it would take out 3/4 of my staff.
Oh my God!
For 2 or 3 weeks, starting the week after Mardi Gras, and like you couldn't function. Like there weren't enough people that were healthy to work.
They were sick. Yeah.
Right. So doing this is going to help with those things as well.
Yeah. Well, going down to New Orleans, and especially the French Quarter for Tales of the Cocktail, there are many a times when I felt in late July I was in a giant petri dish.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
Love to have walked around with a. I felt a little bit like a slug.
Yeah.
And it was as slimy as one after just walking around. Oh,
Yeah.
I love hand sanitizer. Big vat of hand sanitizer I could dive in right back out.
Right.
So,
Actually, when the rains came, it was always really purifying.
Yeah.
Really nice.
So that's a good point, Polly. And just on that topic, outside of the HVAC system, is there any other learnings coming out of this that's going to have a positive effect long term at your business?
I'm sure there's a lot. Those are the big points that we were able to make. And fortunately, there's a little grant money coming to help us make some of those improvements. So I'm going to tell you the odd thing that I wouldn't have guessed. We were 2 floors of service, 24 hours a day, 7 days a year. We closed for Ash Wednesday, and then if we went to Europe, we closed. If I took the staff to Europe,
right? Yeah.
We've been on a 5-day-a-week schedule, Monday through Saturday now for months, and I got to tell you, I like it. I mean, I really do. I mean, there wasn't a place in the old environment. And this is it. If you've ever been in a small business, you tend to want to grow, right? And at a certain point, you're working, 5 times as much. And yeah, you're making more money, but not as much as you're working. And so one of the things that COVID has forced us to do, and my staff would tell you the same thing, is it's forced us to stay at home and relax at least a little bit. Mm-hmm. So there's a part of me, and of course this last year when we were forced to literally stay at home, and all my staff has been in multiple quarantines at this point because, so-and-so that you saw in the grocery store came down with COVID and then you got a quarantine none of us got it, but that happens.
Yeah.
But there's a part of that over the last year, we've been experiencing a slower workload, right? But with the fear of financial ruin hanging over our heads the whole time. So what would it be like to experience the staying closed a day or 2 a week, having reasonable hours, having your staff be able to have good, healthy social lives without the fear of financial ruin hanging over you? And I think that's something, that's something that, and people who aren't in the industry, who work Monday through Friday or even Tuesday through Saturday, don't truly know what it's like. If you're working, if you're a bartender or a kitchen staff and you don't get off till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then sleeping all day, or if you're a graveyard bartender and you're working from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m., it's very difficult to have a normal life. Because
so yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
And those folks have have difficulty raising their kids. They have difficulty meeting the right kind of mate, meeting a mate that's not also in this bizarre time frame. So there is a part of me that I think has learned out of this that the forced slowdown has been in some ways good. Again, we need to not go bankrupt. So, but at any rate, yeah, that's and that's different than Katrina, because we went through Katrina as well. And the thing about Katrina was you just worked because you had to put it back together. And there's a start and a finish, so to speak, with Katrina, and you just never slowed down after it. There was no forced slowdown other than the first couple of weeks. And the pandemic has been different than that.
Yeah, it's really not like anything we've ever done before.
It's never been done before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the first time in human history they've quarantined the healthy. Did you know that?
No. Yeah. They did it for the 1918 flu.
They did not quarantine the healthy.
Okay.
No, that's true.
Well,
Saw some interesting information on it.
All right.
what you kind of said, about the changes, that's sort of the sound bites that I heard early on with, relating back to the brewing industry and how that trickled upstream to, maltsters. Okay, well, the demand wasn't there. If people weren't brewing, then, right. There's no demand for the malts. And I think what I heard too is like, okay, well, this gave us an opportunity, all things aside, right? This gave us an opportunity to kind of shut down and really dig into some maintenance that we probably just sort of said, we'll worry about it later. And so it kind of,
And we did, and that's a really good point. I was talking because Chris in Colorado, why am I blanking on his name? Chris Black, Lou.
Oh, yeah, it's Falling Rock.
Right.
Yeah.
Chris Black and Michael and I all did the same thing. We gutted our walk-ins. We replaced all the lines. We sat there with toothbrushes and made everything sparkle because we had the time to do it. And in a busy bar, especially a 24-hour bar, it's difficult to find time to do that sort of really invasive technical work.
Yeah.
So that was a good thing. And I got a bar remodel. I had to remodel the bar after we did the AC unit because in order to accommodate the machinery, we had to tear out a wall. And so Lou, you've seen pictures online, right? Of the way the bar looks now.
No, I haven't.
You're not going to recognize it. It's completely different.
Wow.
Beautiful. We kept all the original elements, but it's and to use the nasty word again, pivot. It was clear. I know I fussed at you, and now I'm using it. Right? I know.
I'm going to send you a pivot. I'm not if there's a physical one, but I'm sending you one.
So what we realized early on was that to survive this long term, we had to be a place people wanted to come and eat meals, right?
Yeah.
And what we was a place with great whiskey and beer. And they could get some good food while they were drinking whiskey and beer. But to be successful, we needed a lunch crowd. We needed the gray-haired ladies down the street to come in. We needed the tourists who don't want a deep, dark bar to walk in and feel welcome. So it gave us an opportunity. We knew we had to do that. And to develop that food business, we had to lighten things up. And so, Liz, what you said about, remodeling and getting into some of the things that we wouldn't have had time for, we would have had to shut down for a month. It took a month to do the renovations. And pre-pandemic world, I would never have done that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have taken a month off. But it was kind of like, well, I can't be open anyway, so let's do this.
That's very true. Think about all the different places we'll probably go. Hopefully, all the ones that reopen, we go back in. We might not even
be clean.
Yeah, imagine a year without people treading through them and stuff. They'll be clean and different.
So I had one last question, but it comes through a comment from our friend Brad Krause. So this is relating back to the Cloudberry conversation. He said, funny, I had it in Helsinki in 2006.
Helsinki.
Well, and he may have. Stena and Jean sent me bottles, but I'm not the only person they sent personal bottles.
He said Cloudberry delicious. So I don't know what a Cloudberry is, and I've obviously never had the beer. So can you enlighten, give a little...
It's a lot like a snozberry.
A little pro.
One of those.
So I would say that it's, and I've actually never seen one growing, but it's a lot like a more citrusy, smaller blueberry.
Oh.
So it's got a lot of kind of citrus tang to it, which lends itself, I think, really well to lambic.
Yeah.
But they're dark in color. They're like kind of no, they're not. They're golden. I'm wrong about that. They're kind of golden color. And I've never actually eaten a fresh cloudberry, I don't think. You find them in Stockholm and places like that. where they make a lot of jams and jellies and things like that with them.
He does sound like it's made up, though. But if you've actually
it does, but it's not.
Cloudberry.
Cloudberry, yeah.
They grow in the clouds. You smell berries in the clouds. Hey, Federico,
and I personal note, the Icelandics make a bilberry beer, and I'm like, bilberry? What? You have a Fredberry too? What the hell?
Right. I think I've actually heard of that. There's some very odd beer styles in the Scandinavian countries.
Yes.
I mean, really odd, but Cloudberry is not one of them. And I don't think it's an original style it's lambic that's original to Brussels, but the fruit was, I think, that particular fruit edition, I don't think I'm wrong on this, but people will certainly tell me if I am, because lambic aficionados always tell you when you're wrong. I think that was born out of the relationship between Stena and Jean.
Okay.
So I think. Yeah. So Stena, if you're watching, tell us if I'm wrong.
Offering that, yeah.
I'm not going to have one until they make a Chuck Berry lambic. That's one I want, a nice Chuck Berry one. Hey, Federico, I'm taking it, Will, this is Federico Hernandez, yes? Who is the head of Xavi, yes? Oh, correct.
Right.
Yeah, see?
Right.
He says, and PPC loans could be used to employ
I think he's
staff
referring
to help with renovation.
Right. I think he's referring to the PPP, and we've done that. So we got a PPP. Our first PPP was at the time where they were only allowing 8 weeks. So we got the PPP from late April until mid-June. It was gone in 8 weeks. We stuffed all the money we could. We used 80% for payroll, stuffed all the money we could into our employees' pockets and told them, you better save it because we don't know what's coming next, right? And then the second round of PPP just happened, and we started that in late February. So that's what's paying my staff right now is the PPP. And it paid it for those 8 weeks in June as well.
Good. That's nice. I can't wait till I can go down to New Orleans again.
Well, and there are also some other programs that are showing real promise. The employee retention credit is showing a lot of promise if they can ever actually get the money to places. The grants that they just approved in the last session for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund was approved after Biden's latest thing. The ERC, employee retention, was actually approved in December, but they still haven't quite figured out how to get that money to businesses. So I'm not holding. I'm sure I will eventually get it, right? But I'm not holding my breath because these things seem to take 3. They announce them, they pass the bill, and then it takes another 3 to 6 months for the actual money to get to people.
Yeah, well, that's because you got a new person at the agency figuring out how the hospitality industry works, because nobody freaking seems to know how that happens.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Like, are you Panera? Are you a huge
awful
chain?
Lot of ivory
Good,
tower people. Yeah, there are an awful lot of ivory tower people there trying to help the industry who have no idea how the industry actually works. And there's, and I'll just point out that there's a different definition of what works from an owner perspective and a worker perspective. An awful lot, and this is one of my problems with the restaurant association, is they focus all on the owners and profit. Mm-hmm. And the people that make our business what it is are our employees. If people wanted push a button and get a drink with no help, they would go to the store and buy all theirs. They wouldn't go to bars. So if we let our employees drown or, make it so awful that they move to other industries, we have none of our brain trust is gone. And that's one thing I'm actually worried about going forward is how much talent we're actually going to lose across the board, not only with bourbon, but with cocktails. You have to have the really good cocktail people. Those people have a love of their craft that is not equaled by anything except a beer geek, or you know what I'm saying? And if those people are not around, it's going to take a while to train the next generation. or even to convince them that it's a career worth following.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it too. Once all these places start opening up again and the dust settles, there's going to be a lot fewer places for those people to get jobs. And, even then you're going to there'll be a lot of these folks are going to choose another career, another direction, because there's just not as many places, at least here in Chicago. There's been a number of
that's definitely the case in New Orleans too.
I mean, I know I'm eager to get the hell out there, but I know there's a lot of people that aren't.
Well, and Michael Roper and actually Chris Black both, and for people who don't know, Michael owns the Hop Leaf in Chicago, and Chris owns, what's the name of it?
Falling Rock in Denver.
Falling Rock in Colorado. Yeah, I haven't had enough coffee yet today. I apologize, Chris. But they both pointed out something that I think hasn't occurred to a lot of people. They got Chris had a lot of day traffic from the neighborhood office buildings where they'd come in for lunch. Michael got a lot of people who were coming home on the train, and they'd make a stop there before they went home, right? They get a pint or two, maybe a little appetizer. People aren't going back to offices 9 to 5 anymore. So that business it's just gone. Yeah. There's no, and that's just those two guys who I know well and who pay attention to that stuff, but that's going to replay itself all the way over the country.
My wife's company already said you're not coming back till July.
With people continuing to work from home and minimizing the amount of office time they spend, their patterns are going to change. So it might be that they want a bar that's within walking distance of their home, and they'll walk down there afterwards. That might work. Or they might just be not going out as much.
Yeah.
The
one saving grace, though, I would have to say, especially for whiskey bars, but also a number of cocktail bars, is that a lot of them do have very loyal followings.
Oh, absolutely. And beer bars are the same way.
Yeah, they have people who will make an effort to support them as much as they can.
There's no question about that. But like hotel occupancy, your profit is generally in the last 10% of the rooms you book. And bars are very similar, now, if you do like I'm thinking about doing and shave down the hours and shave down the staff to something manageable, then that nut I have to crack every day or every month gets lower too. So maybe it becomes low enough so that it can be handled by just our regulars and our little neighborhood walk-ins.
Yeah.
Well, here's hoping.
Yeah.
Well, life has changed. Yeah. Sorry, you either change or you die. Or you pivot or you die. But
you just barrel ahead. You always have to pivot.
I know. I'm so sorry. This is one of those things.
Pivot is supposed to be a curse word, and
it is a curse word. You gotta bleep it out. Bleep it out.
What was the other one? Pivot, and what was the other one?
Oh, I haven't used that one. Resilience.
Oh,
right. Don't ever talk to anybody who went through Katrina about resilience, right? Because they're tired of that. But I think we're going to emerge like any big event in our lives, in the public life, so to speak, that encompasses this much of the public. Things will change. They just are. It'll accelerate some trends. It'll stop other things in its tracks, and we'll know what's going to happen. What we'll know in 5 years.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to know in 6 months.
Well, I think it's Polly. We wish you the best, and we all hope to get back down to the Big Easy and stop off at the Avenue.
I know Brad said he's eager to get down.
Well, we would love to have all of you, and we absolutely need the business. And if COVID is still going on, you have to wear your mask.
You got it.
That's fine.
Drink right through his mask. Just make all you can drink beer night.
Mask filtered.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be good for the hazies. It'll filter them out.
Right.
You to replace
all those lambic colors on your mask.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Liz, who do we have next week?
I have some great Till Cat in right now, Lou. You need to come down and visit.
What's that?
I have some great Till Cat in right now. You
should
and Driefonteinen.
Nice.
And we've got some really interesting Driefonteinens right now that you should come see us.
Go open up your door. We will be there in about 5 minutes.
All right.
Okay.
Liz, who do we have on next week?
Yes, so really exciting. We have Charlie McLean on next week.
Legendary, epic.
Legendary.
I'm not sure if the link is up, but of course you can always check back on Zavvi for the link for next week. So yeah, Charlie McLean.
Yeah, I loved his book, Guns of Navarone. Fantastic. Can't wait we talk about that.
That's his brother. It's his brother.
Alistair, that's right.
Alistair, yes.
Okay, I forgot. I always confuse the two.
But Charlie's a movie star, so
he is.
Yeah,
that's right. He was pretty good in that.
He was pretty good, even if he wasn't playing himself.
Yeah, he was good at playing himself. Too bad. I wonder. Hey, Will, can we play a clip of that next week? That'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it? We've never had a movie clip. All right. Well, thank you, Polly. You be good. Stay safe down there. Open that place up as soon as you
Polly.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
all right.
Brad's always there. God bless you.
Y'all have to tell me when good. All right.